What can I say? The Magicians is one of my comfort shows. A statement I'm sure baffles a ton of those who have actually seen the show because comfort isn't necessarily a word that people will reach for whilst talking about it. Humorous, yes. Weird, definitely. Entertaining, absolutely. Horrifying, in some parts, yes. Comforting, however. I don't know if that's a term people would readily consider when talking about the show. But for me, it works. The Magicians is one of my comfort shows. I absolutely love it, and its main characters too. Which is wild because in an ensemble cast like this one, it is often expected that you would play favorites and that there would be characters in the bunch that you absolutely hate or cannot stand. Well, for me, that wasn't the case. I loved all the characters. Yes, even Alice Quinn. Neurotic, brilliant, doesn't really think things through Alice Quinn. Because, you see, with Alice, I find myself understanding her, loving her, and feeling sorry for her in equal measure. Because while she can't top the brilliance of Margot and Julia for me, who, by the way, are together with Elliot for trio who own my heart, soul, and kidneys, or Penny, Fen, and Josh, who are my other favorite trio who get my liver, spleen, and intestines, Alice Quinn is the beating, pulsing part in my brain that finds myself unwittingly overthinking to the point of messing everything up. In her, I see a commentary of a character whose brilliance is the very source of her tragedy, both in her own life and in the lives of those around her. And how her story reflects those of us who had been called brilliant or smart when we were younger, and the burden of that, of needing to live up to that expectation, which then sends us careening down paths that we otherwise would not have considered. And I don't know about you, but there is something so beautiful and painful about having that realization that the reason why a lot of people cannot stand Alice Quinn is because she's more like us than we are willing to admit. And no, I'm not saying that we are all good at phosphoromancy like Alice and have the ability to bend light to our will, even though I would absolutely love to have that specialty. No, when I say that a lot of us are more like Alice Quinn, I am referring more to her character's beats. The Magicians, both the books and the TV show, have never shied away from pointing out that these characters are all shitty people, dealing with a ton of things that have messed them up mentally and caused them irrevocable pain. And when you toss magic into the mix, it's a recipe for a beautiful disaster. Alice is introduced to us as this brilliant student at Breakbills who is so high strung as she navigates the school and basically ropes Quentin into helping her call on the spirit of her brother who had committed suicide in the school back when he was studying magic there. Except the summoning spell she uses ends up instead summoning the beast. That is the first instance where we get to see through Alice just how the search for knowledge can drive us as a people to unleash something so catastrophic upon the rest of the world. It is a self-cautioning tale about how limited our knowledge truly is. How no matter how brilliant or intelligent you might think you are, there are things beyond the pale, things your brain can't even begin to conceive of or fathom. And because we are unaware of just how vast the unknown is in our search to learn more, to pitch our brilliance against it, there is the risk of us biting more than we can chew and causing irreparable damage in the process. And all of this, mind you, is how we are first introduced to Alice. Now, I'm not about to say that the other characters don't also have self-destructive tendencies. Quentin most certainly does, as does Julia and Penny and Katie and even Elliot and Margot to some degree. None of these characters are perfect. The lot of them are messy. But it is with Alice that the show fully focuses on a character whose actions always seem to come back to causing disaster in her wake, even though she's often well-meaning in that regard. And I know there are people who are about to start typing out a response on how Alice isn't really a well-meaning person, and to that, respectfully, I disagree. Is she selfish? Yes. All the characters in the show are, even the most altruistic of the lot. Human beings are by our very nature selfish. It is how we ensured our survival as a species. However, selfishness does not mean she isn't well-meaning. Alice's desperation to make contact with her dead brother is something that I can understand. If we consider the type of family she was born into, how outlandish and irresponsible her parents were, leading to Charlie being the one to actually raise her, then we can see why she shares such a close bond with him. It also explains how a parentified Charlie would have, in his desperation to fix things, because that is the legacy and burden their parents placed on a child who shouldn't have had to live with such responsibility, ended up inadvertently killing himself because he wanted to fix things for someone else. I am sorry, but Alice's parents suck, and they contribute in no small measure to the type of person that she becomes. Driven with this desperation to find where she fits in outside of home, which at the start of the show is break bills and then eventually evolves into the found family that she gets to be alongside Quentin and Elliot and Margot and Josh, Penny, Katie, Fen, and later on Julia. Alice Quinn is someone who is desperate for both knowledge and family and a place she can belong. And when you keep that in mind and add in her brilliance, you get a cocktail that is a recipe for a lot of what went down with regards her choices throughout the show. Charlie's death unmoored her in a way that nothing else could quite fill until she got to break bills. That was her brother and parent, and he was just gone, with no explanations or reason given for what actually happened. Break Bills wanted to just sweep things under the carpet because Charlie becoming a Niffin can most certainly not make it to the welcome brochure. And that is a cue for any character who is remotely intelligent to smell a rat. Especially not someone as brilliant as Alice Quinn. There are too many gaps, so of course she has questions and would like to know what happened, whilst at the same time is craving the comfort of her brother, and all of that is what leads to a summoning that goes very, very wrong. And of course, there's the bit that the only way that Alice can defeat the beast is to become a Niffin, where she then, in what for me is the coolest scene in season 2, hands down, and one of the coolest scenes in the show period, rips him apart, causing him to basically disintegrate. Chef's kiss. Ugh. Niffin Alice is so fucking hot. Oh my god. But with her becoming a Niffin and her confirming to the beast, aka Martin Chatwin, that she made the conscious choice to do so in order to kill him, we see just how far Alice's interest and knowledge for magic goes, where she has basically done enough research to know how to get results without any consideration of it potentially leading to her death, or actually, she considers it and welcomes it. Because to Alice Quinn, the result is all that matters. Her brilliance brought her to the conclusion that if she has the knowledge and ability to defeat the beast, then she owes it to herself and to the others to take that chance. Of course, it does come with the benefit of Niffin Alice now becoming a being with a limitless lifespan and the capacity to understand magic on a level that her mortal body could never possibly conceive of. And she's eager to do just that. That is an end result that she wants. Except, of course, she's trapped in Quentin's tattoo, which does put a certain crimp in her style. But the minute she manipulates him into letting her go, she's able to fully dive into the world of understanding magic and carrying out her experimentations that had the byproduct of wiping out entire magical families, a situation that she otherwise had no care about because Alice, even in her Niffin form, is driven, desperate to learn, to task her mind and her brain to the limits it can possibly reach. All for the sake of her learning what no one else had ever discovered, and as a Niffin, she's able to do all of that and more. And this would have been fine and dandy if Quentin hadn't decided to bring her back, and then to make matters worse, he and the rest of the crew had screwed things up so badly that magic got turned off. I think that a large part of the reason why some of the fandom don't get why Alice is so pissed and so irritable when she's no longer in Niffin is because they don't consider that for someone like her, who is so obviously addicted to magic, whose love for it, the knowledge and understanding of it, something that she got to share with her brother Charlie back when it was just them against the world and their irresponsible, never around parents, for someone like her to go from a being that had the capacity to learn it all and gain it all, that can move through their world with such impunity and disregard for anything that would stop her push to learn, for someone like her, Quentin yanking her back into her human form, it's like suddenly severing her from the one thing that she loves completely, the one thing that feeds her soul. So now, There is Alice, recently human with a brain that is quickly losing all that knowledge because memory is also limited, and she's trying desperately to hold on to everything she got to learn when she had unlimited access to said knowledge, with a target on her back and unable to protect herself because in her search for this knowledge that she's rapidly losing at the moment with every breath, she kind of wiped out the families of the magical beings that she was experimenting on, and now they want payback. Because she's not a Niffin anymore. She's not a magician. She's just Alice Quinn. Powerless, weak, and primed for some payback. The chickens were home to roost and she was fucked. All that brilliance brought her to that point and she saw no way out. Her thirst to learn, her connection to magic, it all became this bit of addiction that then colored the way she saw magic and others' interaction with magic, considering her own experience. All of which then brought her to the point in the season 3 finale where she decides that the world would be better without magic, and made the decision to destroy the keys that her friends had spent a large part of the season gathering. Now, I'm not going to lie. The first time I watched season 3, Alice destroying the keys made me rage. Gods, the way I hated her character in that moment and the choice she made. But when I had the time to think about it, it made sense for her. Like I said earlier, Alice is one of the most brilliant characters in the show. The way her mind works and thirst for learning more than others had always led to her making decisions that either lead to her death, her potential death, or in this case, screws over the rest of the world. Because being the most brilliant person in the room often narrows down your focus. You start operating with a God complex and this belief that you know better, that you've read it all, seen it all, and so are in the best position to make the final decision and make the call. Of course, we all know that that isn't the case, that Alice is quite wrong, that her choices put such an inordinate amount of power in the hands of the library and the rest of the order, and ultimately led to the monster getting loose. And for those of us who have seen the end of season 4, all I can say is pain. But even with all of that, I am not as pissed as some of the fans are at Alice and her choices. Because like I said, I understand it. I love her for it. Her intelligence makes her very myopic because she's walking under a false belief that since she knows so much, she knows best. And if there's anything that the magician wants us, the audience, to take away from it all, it is that belief, that false positioning that being the smartest in the room often gives us, that it leaves only destruction in its wake. Of course, that is just my opinion because maybe you don't quite agree with me. Would love to hear your thoughts either way. Please drop them in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share this if you want. Support me on Patreon if you can. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.